For those of you guys who don't know, my name's Austin Lewis, also known as meta.jesus, and I have Illuminated Studios. I've made games with a wonderful team such as Spin the Bottle, Ninja Ball, and recently Kart Clash. And yeah, I'm excited to be here with you guys and get to share what I've learned over the years here. I've been fortunate to be here for 3 years, so I've gotten to learn a little bit about Horizon Worlds. Some learning objectives for this. By the end of this series, you will audit your world's curb appeal, understand how to grow and foster your gaming community, and create a 3-month roadmap for updates. Okay, so really quick, I just kind of wanted to touch on this aspect of Horizon Worlds and other UGC platforms as well. They kind of go through these different phases, and I was very fortunate to kind of come into the Wild West phase when it was not saturated. There was hardly anybody on it. It was tons of experimentation. I mean, you can really just dominate with just intuition and grit and hard work and maybe some small teams just by getting out enough content and filling niches that haven't even been touched yet. Which brings us to the next phase, which is the industrialization phase. This is when polished studios enter, competition increases. This is where to compete, you need processes, systems, data. And yeah, there's a lot more competition. It becomes much more about optimization and perfecting things and really trying to do your best to compete. And yeah, we're kind of, sitting on the edge of phase two here, the industrialization. This means visibility is still accessible. Underserved niches still exist, less so. Early leaders still become the default games for new players entering the ecosystem, but I have to really emphasize urgency here. If you think it's hard to market and get players to your games now, it's only going to become harder and harder and harder as this platform grows. And like I mentioned earlier, I was very fortunate to get here in the Wild West phase where that was a lot easier. And now even myself, I'm coming against roadblocks where I'm like, okay, I actually have to like make processes and systems for getting people into these games, for rewarding them, for optimizing every little aspect of what I do to increase my audience. So it's becoming much more difficult, and I think now is a fantastic time to go all in on it if you've been on the fence, because now we actually have the player base to go along with it that's growing and growing each day before there's too much money in big studios onto this platform. So with that being said, I'm going to introduce you guys to House. A little bit of background around me and why I chose this acronym. Before this, I painted houses. I had zero experience in game dev, so I thought it was kind of easy to understand for me as far as how to explain this. So it's kind of fun. House, H would stand for hook, O for outreach, U for unity, S for status, and E for expansion. So it's a framework reverse engineered from successful Horizon World titles. Now, House can help you gain confidence and clarity into the process of marketing, maintaining, and growing your world by breaking it down into small, actionable steps. So this is learning what has worked for enduring top worlds and seeing how we can apply it to yours. So one of the easiest and most effective things you can focus on, but it's also the most neglected that I see, and that is your book, your foundation of the house here. And this is what pulls people in. It's your curb appeal. It's everything. This is your thumbnail, this is your world title, and this is your concept. Okay. Really important when people are scrolling through tons of options and you have not only just Horizon Worlds platform, but you have TikTok, you have every other thing that could possibly take your attention away on your cell phone. You really need things that stand out. So it's really got to pop. It's really got to make you feel something. It's got to make you be like, oh, this looks neat. Click on it. Like getting the click is the hardest thing and the most important thing. So let's talk about it. So let's treat this as a little questionnaire here. Example one is the one on the top, and example two is on the bottom. Can I just get a quick like poll in the chat of which one you think is more appealing, one or two? It's a pretty easy consensus there. I mean, it's really simple. This bottom one, it's just kind of muddy. It blends in. Nothing about it stands out, really grabs your attention, and you just kind of glance over it, right? The top one is obviously more contrasting, more prominent. It's got a lot more flair and personality. It's fairly easy. Even with Kart Clash, a game that we recently released, we kind of went through the same process where we had our original concept here in the top left. And it was cool. It showed off some more carts. but it just kind of felt generic and a little too much like it blended in. It was still halfway decent. Obviously, in the middle here was like a really bad example I made for my artist of like, I kind of want something more like this, a little bit more focused, a little bit more of an action shot. And then they came back with this one on the bottom left, which is much, much better, more action oriented, a little more polished looking. It's a lot more appealing. So the number two on the bottom, as far as what the game is, conveys it better. It fits into actual Horizon World style better. It's a little bit more appealing generally, and it had much better, much better click-through rate than the original one that I put together in Canva in about 5 minutes. So yeah, as you can tell, just little things like this drastically, yeah, and with smaller size exactly. It drastically improved our click-through rate going from essentially nothing and like 8 concurrent players to like 40 just with the thumbnail change. So very, very, very important to A/B test, guys. Okay, so some homework for you guys as far as the thumbnail goes. I'd love to see you guys create new thumbnails for your game, share it in Discord for peer feedback, and then also just scroll through any UGC platform feed and write down the first 6 thumbnails that really catch your attention. What traits do they have in common? And you'll typically find similar things and especially platform specific. You know, like on Roblox, they always kind of have this somewhat anime drawing style of their characters that seems to work really well or really high contrast, like mentioned. And then Fortnite, they use iconic kind of skins. I'm looking forward to seeing more of that in Horizon as we get kind of more iconic fantasticals and stuff and those represented inside those thumbnails. So another very important thing here is your title. So I'll use Spin the Bottle as an example here. Obviously, Spin the Bottle is a lot more familiar than Table of Doom. Both names would work technically, and both would apply to the game. So Spin the Bottle, it's a game inside Horizon that's been fairly popular here for about 2 years. It's very simple. Essentially, a bottle spins. Whoever it lands on gets a gun, and they get to then eliminate another person from the table until one person remains and they win. It's ridiculously simple. But as we'll talk about in this next session, there's lots of little systems that we put on top of it that make it extremely fun and retentive and community building. So going back to the title here, very important is that it's familiar, memorable, and that it fits the vocabulary of your audience. So obviously, what do teenagers all know? They all know Spin the Bottle. If we all kind of grown up knowing what that game is, it's very familiar, makes sense. You kind of instantly have an idea of what it kind of implies. But, obviously it's like you don't expect that. So you're kind of wondering, you're curious. It opens up that thought process, but it also reduces the friction to clicking on the game because it's familiar versus like Table of Doom, you're not sure what could that entail. Like you don't know, but at least with Spin the Bottle, there's a bottle, it's gonna spin. It reduces the cognitive load of just being able to click on it. So going back to this concept and emotion, really you have to understand your audience, prioritize fun and emotion over fidelity initially, and make joining an easy decision. So that goes back to kind of the thumbnail and also the title, which is understanding my audience of being teenagers. I figured that that was a good name and that it's kind of a fun and silly name that they're like curious about. And it's kind of an easy decision to join because you already understand kind of a basic premise of it. So it's really, really important that we think about that. So now with that, we're going to want you guys to write down who the target audience of your game is. And I really want you guys to focus just on one game for these sessions. Pick one that you really want to grow, that you're invested in, and let's focus on that one. So write down who your target audience of that game is. And then I want you guys to think about what about your game title and thumbnail creates familiarity and emotion for your audience. If you don't know who your target audience is, then that's something you need to decide on. Um, especially if you've already designed the game and you're not sure who your target audience is and you've already built it, then you're probably doing things backwards, and that's probably the first thing you need to think about when you're making your game. Now, what we're doing at this moment is focusing on games that have already been built. So with that being said, like who does your game appeal to if you're not sure? Now, if it is teens and young adults, which most here would be, then yeah, that's fairly common. So With that being said, what about your title and thumbnail creates familiarity and emotion for your audience? And what is it about your game that makes it an easy decision to click on? So, with that being said, now we're going to do the foundation audit on that blueprint. Quick question for you guys. How many of you are actively A/B testing thumbnails for the world that you're working on right now? You haven't done it yet. Super important. Give it a try, please. It's one of the most useful tools, and it goes back to all this. And you should always be experimenting, even when you think that you have a really great one. There's always room for improvement. So I always recommend just to keep trying. It is a lot of work, yes, but it's also when it comes to like ROI, I think it's probably the best thing that you could do. Getting clicks is the single most difficult most difficult thing. You could have an amazing game. If you're underperforming in that regard, then you are selling yourself so short, you're missing out on tons of money. It's honestly the cheapest and easiest thing we can do to really lift our games up and get in the algorithm. So I highly encourage it. Really, really do. And even, if you're on a budget and time-wise too, like try Canva. Get a really nice logo that you can consistently use so that it's familiar. Everybody always knows what it is, but experiment with different backgrounds, experiment with different theming, retheming it for the holidays. Just try different things and continue to experiment. And I think that's kind of going to be the theme of this whole presentation over the next, between this one and the next one is that you got to keep iterating and experimenting and looking at the data and seeing what's working and what's not. And it's going to be different for every game. All right. So moving from the foundation and the hook, we're moving to outreach slash windows. This is the visibility into your game, right? So this includes collaborations, marketing, Discord communities, development progress updates, social media engagement, community interaction. These are the things that, once you get them through the door, this is how, you show them a glimpse, right? And sorry, I had that backwards. Once you give them a glimpse, then you can get them through the door, right? And then continue to give that insight. So with that being said, collaboration, this has been extremely important for my success on this platform. So, you can benefit from a shared audience, and that includes doors, social media, events. Especially in the earlier days of Horizon, doors were pretty essential to getting traffic, and they still are fairly important. Obviously, with the bonus structure now, it's a little bit more complicated because we're all kind of taking a piece of the pie here. But if you can find people that you can share traffic with. It's really going to help everybody. Um, Not only that, but we now have insights into traffic allocation. So you could figure out deals based off of how many people visited from that door, etc. So it's really underutilized and think underappreciated. There's been a lot of success just from door traffic alone, getting something into the algorithm. So by doors, I mean there's a gizmo within the desktop editor that you can put in, and it can link to another world. So then you can be in that world, see this image of another world with a visit button, and then from there you can try that world. Now you can do this with your own worlds as well, and then you can do, cross-world PPVs to incentivize. So say that you have a world that's, somewhat popular and you're trying to get another world off the ground, then you can do a quest like, play 5 rounds in this other game and unlock this exclusive cosmetic in this current game that you're in. So, and then also with that, social media. I've had success with people doing like a makeup tutorial themed in Spin the Bottle, um, just little cross collaborations of like, oh, check out, this world and we hop to this one and we'll touch on some more of those here in a minute. And then obviously like events, so there's a lot of groups within Horizon that you may find like indie tours. There used to be another one hosted by Oculos. I don't think he's doing it anymore. But those also help kind of get you some initial traffic and visibility. So I want to talk about a world here called Grow in Space. Now, I have the privilege of getting to work with Johnny here quite a bit. He was the main programmer on Kart Clash, but he's extremely, extremely talented in his world Grow in Space. He's done exceptionally well. Now, just through door traffic alone, he was able to get 2,000 visits per day. So he soared to high concurrency after we put the door into spin. And I will say he has applied so much of House and his own passion into, updates and features, and his love for it really, really shows. Um, the interesting thing is that he's got an insane amount of visits, but he's got such a super, super low unique visit rate. And it's like that tells us quite a bit of things. One, he's applying a lot of great retention features. His community is growing. They keep coming back. They keep spending tons of time, but he's not getting people through the door. So I am pushing on him now to do A/B testing with thumbnails. And with that, I really think, he could soar into the top 20 just because his visits and his concurrency are insane for only having 14,000 unique visitors. He's already doing as well as Worlds with hundreds of thousands of unique visitors. So really just working on his door appeal and just getting people to click on it is really, really going to help him because once they're in there, they absolutely love it. I mean, he does so many special things like limited time events. He's got rituals, which we'll talk about in the next session. Daily things, weekly things, monthly things, competitions, tons of player agency, which is extremely important. Um, like they have a thing where it's like grow the biggest pumpkin and whoever gets it gets their thing displayed in the world and tons of bragging rights and status. And so he applies so much of house to his game and it really, really shows and really, really proud of him and what he's done with it. And if he A/B tests some more and starts focusing on data, I think he's gonna really, really soar with this world. So that's just a great example, of kind of how important getting people into the door is. And once he starts doing that exceptionally well, this world's just going to absolutely soar for him. Some more collaborations here. I got the pleasure of doing Creepy Crawl with a couple studios here. As you can see, it was a little Halloween event. It was semi-effective. We made an event. We kind of everybody linked their doors like this. Yeah, it had some success, and it was a fun opportunity to collaborate with other people and kind of build those connections. And then, as I mentioned earlier, West Coast, she did a little makeup tutorial in the theme of Spin the Bottle. That was really fun, and it did really well on social media. Kind of a fun little collaboration. And then I'm doing one with Sadie Chan here coming up. She has Visit Japan XR, which is a fun community that she's worked really hard on building up. And I'm going to kind of link it inside Ninja Ball, and then she'll do the same. So it's kind of, we're not competing. We kind of share maybe an interest, a community. So it's kind of a nice way for her to community to have like a game that they can go to that shares the same theme, and then vice versa for people that are interested in like the Japanese culture that clicked on Ninja Ball because of the theme that they then have a community that they can go to and socialize with as well, and then come back and play the game. So these things, really, really help. Okay, development progress. Super important, underutilized again. Let players in. You should get feedback as early and as often as possible. So, either if you're developing a game or if it's published and it's just, it was a competition world, especially, it's not much time to make it super polished or to get it to where you want. So share your journey with that and let people kind of give your feedback or give their feedback in the process. And it gets people involved. People really like to feel a part of it. They feel like they're a part of the development of the game. It gets them invested. And we'll speak in the next session about anchor players, but this is where you build your like real core group of players that are there and are kind of your evangelists for the game, the people that become, possibly your moderators, your testers. This is a lot of hype that you're building here with by doing this. And I will say a shout out to Morgul. If you don't follow him, it's a necessity if you're building on Horizon Worlds. He is the king of this. That's something that I'm improving on myself. But he has, every day, every other day, little progress updates about things that he's doing, touching, altering. He's really, really exceptional at it. And it really shows his community is extremely engaged. They always are giving their ideas and input and excitement. And it really, really helps him. So, with that being said, I think it's really important that we be extremely honest with ourselves. I would say list how many times you have posted about your game on each of these platforms, from Discord, YouTube, TikTok, and then honestly ask yourself if you've posted enough. And even myself, I say, no, I could do more. And I'm not getting enough eyes. I kind of got in the Wild West where I was able to build that and then funnel through doors. But if I was to have to start over, then I'm not doing enough. I mean, that's something that, I'm honest with myself with and that we all need to be honest with is, are we actually being consistent? Are we setting a posting schedule? Are we coming up with ideas and saying, hey, we need to do this week, this next week, we have to do this. We're trying different hashtags. We're experimenting, analyzing the data of our posts and seeing what's working and what's not. There's a lot to it, a lot more than we usually anticipate. So just a little bit of testimony kind of circling back to the release early and then polish later. There's a lot of very popular games who just focused on the fun over fidelity initially. And I'm sure, especially with VR, you could think of a couple such as Gorilla Tag, Animal Company, Devil's Roulette. A lot of these games, they kind of just shipped out a game in 4 months, got it out the door, and then they kept iterating on it and growing it as they saw that it was popular before investing a ton into it initially. So I'd say, we all have these competition worlds that we're now wanting to promote. They were shipped early, of course, and get that feedback. Keep pushing. That's what a lot of these studios are doing to stay lean and to risk, spending way too much money on something before they know that it has a chance of success. So really try to analyze once you get enough traffic into the world, how well is this performing and then move from there. And I would say if it's something you really believe in, try to get 10,000 visits. And from there, you'll really be able to kind of get an idea on if it could be a success or not, or if it has potential and what you need to adjust. And that's also something that we will be touching in Thursday's session. So social media, content strategies, consistency, shareability, rewarding engagement, there's a lot of different strategies here, and I know it can feel extremely overwhelming. We're already developing games, we're doing all these little things, we're fixing bugs. It's also hard to sit there and think, oh, I need to promote it. But I would say, you put 4 months into development of a game, you should probably try to put 4 months into marketing your game. I know it's difficult and maybe not everybody's favorite thing, but it's extremely, extremely important. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to this, and there's a lot of platform differences. And I will say, as far as the teen and young adult audience, they're mostly on TikTok. So try to build that TikTok audience, but obviously with the Meta's integrations, Instagram and Facebook are also important. They're probably going to have features in the future where it's a lot easier to get people directly to your world from your post. So you want to be growing that community still on those platforms. So yeah, I mean, the why of this though is it's only going to become more difficult. It's only going to become more competitive. Right now, we're still kind of at a point where the algorithm can kind of float you up still. But I'm sure a lot of you have realized like it is a little bit difficult and you might have a great game, but just getting enough eyes on it is still very challenging. And so that's why now you should be growing your social media because when those integrations come, that's going to be the main doorway that we get people into our games. And so really, really focusing on that. If I was to make one point of this whole thing is social media, social media, social media, start growing it now. Um, yeah, I mean, how many people are on Facebook, Instagram in this world? And that's all your potential audiences here in the future. Once, the catalog's built up enough and they're ready to turn on the floodgates, right? So don't be discouraged. It's daunting, I know, but I think now's the easiest time. And we're still so early. There's still so much opportunity, and yeah, just try to have fun with it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, by the book. Try to figure out a way where like what can you do that you enjoy that you can be consistent with, and that's what I would recommend. So engage in the community to make content. This is the strategy that I've been rolling with lately. I mean, I'm finding a lot of success with it, and I want to share it with you guys because I also feel like it's extremely daunting to be super consistent with posting on social media. And I'm always looking at how can I get a better return on investment? How can I do more with less, especially with wanting to keep my studio lean and to not get too big and worried about paying everybody's salary and everything. So I'm always thinking, how can I do more with less? How can I compete with big studios with less? And so one thing that I really learned from a lot of top VR games is that their community makes content. They make tons of content. They love making content, and it shows. So they have a small marketing budget because so much of the community does it for them. And so I want to kind of talk about how we've done it. So offering rewards for creating content. This is important, although a lot of people do it just they just enjoy the game. And also just getting the recognition or the visibility, you know, giving shout outs. Yeah, what kind of rewards? We'll touch on that here in a second. Lots of different options, but I think the most important thing is just a recognition. They love to feel seen. People want to be validated. People want to feel important. I have an example here with Morgul. These are all, reposts of other people's content that makes them feel special. Like, hey, this awesome world creator shared my reel. Like, how cool! Like, it's a really rewarding experience. It really players trust other players more than ads. So when they see like other people having fun they know aren't the company, then it kind of opens that trust, right? Um, and also like including players in promotional content too. Like sometimes I'll reach out to my Discord and be like, hey guys, I'm making a video to promote this new gun or this or that. Would anybody like to be in it? Or hey, I have this person from YouTube coming in. I would love for you guys to be in the video and also make content. And so I'm kind of always encouraging ways for them to be seen, feel rewarded. That's really, really important. So here's an example of some community made content. I'll show you guys.
Something bad is about to happen to me.
Sorry, it's not raining.
I don't know, but I feel it coming. Might be so sad, might leave my nose running. I just hope she don't wanna leave me. Something bad is about to happen to me.
So as you can see, for me to make that video, it would take a decent amount of time. Now, obviously, when there's, 50 different people making videos like that, that's a lot more scale than I could do myself. One thing that I would do moving forward, though, the intro was a little long, maybe a little hard to kind of get into. So what I'm doing now is I'm making a creator packet that kind of gives rough guidelines and video sample ideas, as well as like what hashtags to potentially use. And this is all for, special rewards in games. So we have a special content creator gun that they earn by posting for at least 3 weeks, and at least 5 videos. And I was really worried that once they accomplished this and then submitted in our Discord, that they would stop making content. And I found that the majority of them continue to make content, and we've had great success with it. Now, definitely with some more coaching and some more like strategies, like I mentioned with the creator packet, they will have much more success. They're very excited about it. It's been a lot of fun actually, like getting to do this and seeing all the unique ideas and kind of perspectives that they have of the game. They're extremely creative. They understand my audience better than I do because they're that age, right? So they know what's fun, they know what's popular, they know what's trending, they know all the memes more than I do myself. And so I've really focused on just harboring and fostering that rather than trying to necessarily figure it all out myself. Because what I understand is my game and how to incentivize people. I don't necessarily understand content. They do. They know what works for their audience. They're all on TikTok all the time. So I really think that that is the direction that we're fully investing in, and I hope to see more people invest in. Yes, no, community content, it definitely is kind of a more once you have a little bit of established game. And that's where like the hook and your kind of initial push is really important. And then once you get that and it comes to scaling, that's where community content really becomes important. And I mean, even like Grow in Space, that world that I mentioned earlier, he would do really well with it also, despite having smaller community because he hasn't had a ton of unique visits. His community is extremely dedicated and the kind that would make content. For a new game, a marketing kit. Yes, I mean, there's a lot of other references and sessions that have been done on kind of the initial marketing push and launch push that I would definitely reference. The marketing kit is kind of more that I mentioned here is more for my community as far as like including graphics of all of the guns, including what hashtags they should use, and kind of giving general guidelines, an initial video hook. And even that's from kind of the content that's been put out by Scout House already as far as like your launch, your marketing, your social media, and then kind of applying that and passing that on to my community. Just wanted to share one more fun one with you guys. Again, I love this community content. It makes me so happy to see. And just
Watch this get 10K views. Oh my god, I think I farted.
So yeah, as you can see, like they're able to show the culture of spin a lot better than I could personally. Yeah, the end's awesome. No, it's fantastic. They make amazing content. They get it, man. I feel like I'm too old to understand half the stuff that they do, but if I can put them in a position to where they feel validated, they feel happy to make content, they get satisfaction from it, then I'm gonna push with that. Back to kind of engaging the community and yeah, and getting feedback as you build, do polls. So like in our Discord, social media, ask the players what they want. Like we're in a unique position where we're not a big corporation just making a game and assuming what people want. We get to actually ask them and be engaged with them. And I think that's underutilized is just that communication with your community and players. And like I said, building up those anchor players that we'll get to talk about, and even anchor items which were shown in the content creator videos that we'll talk about next session. It's really, really important. Just get their feedback, see what they want. As you can see here, we asked them if they would rather have a season pass skin game mode, and majority said new map skin. So it also happens to be the easiest for us to update, so that's always a win. So I just want to share here a little clip from our Discord. This is just our clips channel of people making content. And it's fun to see, when people see other people doing things, they want to join in on it. And it kind of just builds this momentum and this hype to keep making content. As you see, it's a good chunk for, 4 days there of people submitting content as we're just kind of building up this process. And you can see here we integrated a bot into our Discord where they can then apply and ask them several questions like, have you posted for this amount of time? Have you done this? And then it link to their Discord. And then we're able to kind of either accept them and then they go into their own special channel where they get more direct access and communication with me and kind of where we float ideas for content and have fun. Let's see, would you use the same technique for visual novels? There's definitely a lot of time managing, which is why we're trying to, optimize it into, like the application and whatnot. But it's definitely, this has been a lot less work than me having to come up with my own content and make it and edit it and post it. And the more that I can focus on creating systems for community content and growing that, the better in my eyes. So let's say you have applied these strategies and you get your first 10,000 players. This is where it's really important and where you kind of know, like, does this game have a future or not? So this is where we're looking at our average play time and seeing how you compare to the rest of Horizon. If you're above those two other lines, the 75th percentile, there's a really good chance you have a ton of opportunity for growth and really invest into this world. If you're a little bit below that percentile line, there's still a chance. There's still room for improvement. It could be something as simple as your lobby design, little things like that you need to really approach and think about. Now, as we touched on earlier, unique visits versus visits. If you have a ton of unique visits and your total visits are not much higher, that means you're not retaining people. Obviously, maybe your unique visits are super high, you have a great hook, you get them through the door, but then your gameplay is lacking. Or in Grow in Space's example, it's got tons of visits and hardly any unique visits. So that tells you that the thumbnail and the curb appeal needs work. Retention, obviously, how many people are coming back to your game kind of ties in with all that. Super important. When you got 14,000 visits and 140,000 visits versus the 14 unique, um, you have great retention. So I will say the hardest thing right now with Horizon is definitely the shelving. Especially on mobile, there's still fairly limited space. In VR, it's a lot easier. So games that kind of can do both have a little bit easier time, kind of getting that initial visibility. I think when there's more integration with social media and getting direct links, the shelving will become a lot easier on mobile. Right now, it's kind of seems like it's more, featured spots, less natural algorithm. And so there's a lot of work to be done there, but that shouldn't discourage you from building your foundation for everything now and really gearing up for that. That's why I really am encouraging people to build their audience and their community now before it becomes increasingly difficult. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a huge community or audience, but you need to have a really strong core community and audience. Now, with that, as far as next steps, if you reach 10,000 players and you're showing promising metrics, this is where I highly recommend that you install Turbo Analytics if you haven't already. It's a little bit of a lift, but it's extremely important for optimization because then you're going to find little friction points like, hey, I'm only getting 20% equip rate on items from this store. That's probably telling you players aren't seeing it, or there's friction to getting there, or they're getting to the lobby, they're not making it into the game. Well, that's really going to hurt your numbers. That's really going to hurt you in the algorithm. So you need to focus on how can I fix that and keep experimenting with it. With Turbo Analytics, it's going to give you all of the knowledge into the core workings of your game and then allow you to experiment, which is very, very important, is to keep iterating and experimenting with what's working and what's not. Where can you improve? It's fairly straightforward, but again, I'm guessing extremely underutilized in most games. So what have we learned and how can we improve? First, I just want to say so much more of this is going to be touched upon and go in depth on Thursday's session. So everybody here, I hope you come to that one because you'll probably learn a lot more. This was kind of more of a foundation and basic intro as to just like stressing the importance of like making sure that you have good curb appeal and just you're interacting with your community and actually putting in effort and being honest about how much effort you're putting into it. Uh, Glad you're learning a lot. But yeah, Thursday, so much more. Yeah, real quick. All of the rewards you're giving still accessible in your world. They are all accessible in my world still. Does it put the game? Yeah, there's going to be some, which is where we get into like asset pooling, spawning. Definitely learn about those, see how you can fit more inside your game. And it can even, you can do things that don't bloat your game, such as special titles. So, like for our content creators, if they reach 5,000 views, they could get one that says Spin Enthusiast. If they get 10, it could say Content Creator. If they get 50,000 views on a video, maybe I give them a celebrity title. So these are little status things that we can give them as rewards that make them feel important in the game that don't bloat the game either. So just be creative. That's a good piece of advice. Think of ways where you can get the best return with as little of effort as you can, a little investment as you can, a little as bloat as you can. Always be thinking about that and experimenting with that. Tips for lobby design. Just make sure, put yourself in the player's shoes and think if I entered this world for the very first time, is it clear what I need to do within 5 seconds? And if it's not, then think about how you could change that. And I think there's also sessions that have been done on this. If I'm not mistaken, maybe somebody could link it kind of on level design. I think Space Glitters touched on it. And also just reference top games. Eugene Amorgel, he's got really great design as far as kind of player pathing and getting them into the game, especially in his element battling worlds. His initial gyms, just kind of the player flow. Fantastic work on that. So what have we learned? Kind of just, the basics of getting people to click on the game, which is the most important thing. You can have an amazing game, but if they don't click on it, who cares, right? So you have to get them in the door. And how can we improve? We need to be very self-introspective and really ask ourselves honestly, am I doing what is required? Am I doing enough? And that's where this blueprint comes in. And I want you guys to really focus on that and be honest when you're answering those questions and say, am I actually doing this? Am I getting the results? Can I say yes and actually back it with data? And if you can't, then focus on it. Let's work on it. With that being said, we now have the outreach section of our blueprint to kind of end off here. As you can see here, you have this section, self-audit checklist, and then you have a social media commitment, and then you have goal setting, where you write down 8 goals for increasing the visibility of your world in the next 30 days. And those could be little ones, but I highly encourage you to do goals that you know that you can do, that you feel like you could potentially be consistent with. As small as like I'll post 1 story a week, or I'll try to engage with my community twice a week, little things like that. All right, guys. And with that, we are concluded here. Thank you, guys.